Hey everyone, it's Foxx from eModels here, back with part 4 of our build of the Revell Colonial Viper Mark II. As you can see, I couldn't wait and I finished the kit. Thanks, bye! Actually, it's not. This is one I made a few years ago. I couldn't resist that. I'll show you why I've got this out in a moment. But back to the build. You'll remember when we last met. Can you say that when you're doing a video? Met? I don't know. When you last watched my video. I was in the process of reshaping the back of the fuselage. It was warped out and the two parts here didn't meet. Had some good success with that. Pretty much went back together with maybe 1/4 to 1/2 millimetre gap. I was quite happy with that and I knew I wasn't going to get any more out of it, so I applied all the glue in the world, all of it, and I've clamped it with some pegs and tape. I'm going to leave it for 24 hours to cure and set properly. I have a little shout out to Alan Rockwell on the eModels Facebook page, facebook.com/eModels Ltd. Yes, I got it right at once. I said I was going to do this with super glue because I thought super glue would give the strongest grip possible. Alan put a comment on the Facebook page just to say, yeah, it gives a really strong grip, but you might not know that super glue does tend to, in some cases, break down and you lose that grip and you lose that bond. I didn't know that. It was a gap in my knowledge. I'm not a professional model maker. I do these things for fun, as I always say, so there'll be lots of things I don't know. As I said in the last video, plastic cement melts the plastic together and fuses it that way. Super glue works by dark magic. Nobody knows really for sure how it works. It just works, but it doesn't melt the plastic together. It doesn't fuse it. It uses unicorn breath and dark magic and kittens or something, I don't know. But basically, if it doesn't melt the plastic, it just bonds with itself almost. So when that breaks down, of course, your parts will fly apart again. So didn't go with super glue, went with poly cement. I'll just show you if I can get that in for you. It's actually quite nicely stuck together. Bit rough and ready around there, but I'm going to be cleaning that up and filling it anyway. I also discovered just after I'd done all that the piece that goes in here actually locks it all in place anyway. So kind of was panicking for nothing. But if you're going to do it right. So that was that sorted. So if you do get warped pieces on your kit, just give it the hot water treatment unless it's too thick, and it might work. So I'm going to put that to one side. One little story. The reason why this board is the other way around, and I may sound a little tripped out, this peg flew off when I was putting it down and threw my glue everywhere. I mean, it was like a tidal wave. It was a tsunami of glue. Completely took all the markings off this board, so the other side looks terrible, so I've turned it over because it looks nice and neat. So yeah, and this room has smelled of glue fumes for about 2 days. Excellent. So I've got all the windows open, all the extractor fans on. I've just avoided this room for a couple of days. And it's still a bit stinky in here, but it'll fade eventually. It's going. So yes, however, upside of that, and a nice thing that came out of it, was when the guys at eModels put up Ted Hawksworth's Tamaya Challenger video, part 1. He's done part 2 now. Go and check them out. He put in a stupidly good point in there, which is incredibly useful, and I don't know why I'd never thought of it. Basically, stick your glue on a bit of wood, or a placemat, or something that's sturdy, with some plasticine or blue tack. I'm completely reiterating it because it's an incredibly obvious thing that most people don't think of, and it's incredibly useful. If I knock that now, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to fall over. Luckily for me, my parts were all to one side, so there was no messing up of the model kit, but I'm not going to be knocking that over again anytime soon. So, Ted Hawksworth, you're a genius. I love you, you're a genius. I'm now your Padawan. You're the master, I'm the not master. Teach me more things. So yeah, go and check out Ted's videos. So that's going to go off to cure for maybe 24 hours, just to make sure the glue grips. What I'm going to show you in the meantime is we're going to make this look spanky and dirty and metallic. This is the engine part that goes on the back. And the reason I brought that old Viper in is because this is what I want it to look like. I want it to look like that. Metallic-y, grungy, grimy, engine-y, oil and dirt and grease. I'll bring it up close so you can see it. As I said, I made this kit a few years ago. Basically it's just flat aluminium, and I'm going to use some smoke washes, some black washes, some smoke, and some more flat aluminium to give that effect. On raised details it comes out quite clean with the grunge below. On flat areas you get that kind of burnished, oily metal look. So I'm going to try and emulate that. Looks better on there than on there. Didn't come out quite so well on the goose feather, so I might try something different on here. I mean, truth be told, this kit, I made it, what, 2 or 3 years ago? There's a lot I'm not happy with on this kit, like all the weathering. But I'm going to, obviously, I've learnt a lot since I made this kit, so we're going to try and replicate that, and hopefully it'll work. So, let's get on with it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to need, basically, just a few colours and one brush. I'll have to do this in stages and let washes dry, so there'll be a lot of cuts in this. I'm going to need the part itself, which has been sprayed Tamiya flat aluminium XF16. It's a really nice colour. It's one of the best metallic colours there is, I think personally, apart from alclad sprays, which are actually metallic. So it's been sprayed XF16. I'm going to use some black washes, and this is just a little pot of Tamiya flat black mixed with Tamiya thinner. I need to refill that. And some Tamiya smoke wash, which is again just Tamiya smoke X19 mixed with Tamiya thinners. Flat black is XF1 if I remember correctly. And I'm also going to use Tamiya smoke, which is an incredibly versatile paint for kind of anything. It's got so many uses. You can tint canopies with it, you can warm colours on a body, you can make them look slightly dirty, you can use it for staining, fading, you can make metallic burnishes, all kinds of stuff. So what I am going to do is, this may not be very exciting to watch because it's a long way away, but first stage, I've got it sprayed flat aluminium. I'm going to have to do this in halves, so you won't see all of it. Any old brush, doesn't matter. I've got these brushes I've had for about 20 years. They've not died yet, so first thing I'm going to do is a couple of washes of black. Again, it's flat black XF1 mixed with Tamiya thinner. A few dots of paint in the thinner basically. You can add more if you need to. Now I'm not going to be careful with this. I'm not going to be delicate. I'm just going to slap it on. This thing needs to be grimy and dirty. It's an engine that's used all the time, constantly out on patrol. Maintenance is rough and ready. There's not a lot of stuff going on, not a lot of supplies on the Galactica. So it doesn't matter if I put too much on. Spread it out a bit. The only bit you can really see on the kit is this part anyway, so I'm not too fussed about the end, but I'll cover them anyway. Right, so I'm going to leave that to dry for about half an hour. Then I'll turn it over and do the other side. And then I'll come back and we'll do the smoke. So give me 2 seconds. Hang on. When we come back, we'll have all this done and we'll do another wash of the black and then some smoke. Back in a second. And we're back. Okay. I've done a couple of flat black washes on this engine part now. Let it dry for about an hour. Just let the wash evaporate out completely. The way a wash basically works, as I explained I think previously, is that you're thinning down the paint with thinner, strangely enough, so that it can feed through gravity into all the recessed areas. If I put it like this, it would all gather down the bottom, so I had it like this, so it goes into all the little grooves. As the thinner evaporates, the thinner makes it more fluid and flowy. As the thinner evaporates, it deposits the paint residue in the grooves and just gives some depth and some shading. So you can see it's gone into the grooves, and those grooves look darker now. It's gathered a bit in some of these little dimples. I'll just bring it closer so you can see. Let's have a look. Get my focus going. So you can see it's gone into the grooves, giving it some nice darkness. Where are we? It's weird doing it on camera. I'm going to do it the wrong way around. And it just gives it some depth and some... It does change the colour slightly. The silveriness is a bit duller. But that's just the beauty of the black wash. Black wash is, like I've said before, a lot of people tend to whether a whole vehicle, say for example with a black wash, just to get the panel lines out. I find black a bit too harsh, as I've said before. I would use something like smoke or something else. But for things like engine components or anything that's supposed to be really, really filthy and dirty, black does come in handy. So that's the black wash done. You have to make sure, if I'm doing it this way, have to make sure the two coats have fully dried on this side before I turn it over and do the other side. The reason being that when you do any kind of wash, if you've not varnished the piece after painting it, I didn't have any varnish on top of the flat aluminium. The thinner in the wash would potentially loosen the paint that's already on the part. When you apply a wash, you're not pressing down on the brush and you're not brushing it in, you're simply putting the brush on the surface, if necessary very gently running it across and letting the wash flow. If you start digging the brush in, you'll probably pull the paint up that's already on the part. I could have put a matte varnish on there, but I will be honest, I completely forgot. So, but nothing bad came of it. Right, so that's the black wash done. That's discoloured it slightly, but not much. It's still kind of silvery. What I will do now is a smoke wash. And this is just to... It's kind of silver and black at the minute. I want to make it silver and black with a smoky hint. So before I just use neat smoke, I shall use some thin smoke. Again, this is just a basic wash. It's the way I tend to mix my washes. If you can see, that is a pot full of Tamiya thinner, and then maybe a brush full of paint, a little bit more. Mix it in. That's usually about the right consistency for me for a wash. You can add more paint, you can add less. It depends what you want. Now the beauty of smoke, as I said before, is it isn't a solid black, and you probably won't even see this. It looks black when you put it on, but when it dries, it will go a lovely sort of oil stain, burnishy, it's kind of hard to explain, brown tinge, a very warm colour. If you apply it on something white, it will make it look slightly stained, but it will also warm that white up. I'm just dotting it on here to help it build up, try and get these little dimples here. It's going on top of the black, so it's going to look darker. With any wash as well, when you let the wash dry, it may look quite dark and intense at first, but as it dries out, it becomes a little lighter. So you may put on a black wash, for example, and it will look, all the recesses will look black as night. Come back an hour later when it's dried, they'll look dark, they won't look black. So there is some natural fading. Now this is just going to go into all the recesses. I know it's not capturing on the edges and the ridges. It's only really ever so slightly discolouring the silver colour, the aluminium colour. But that's cool because that's what the smoke will do later on, the unthin smoke. This is gathering, I don't know if you can see, it's gathering around the edges here, and you get this kind of shade where it goes from silver to the smoke on the inside, but it kind of fades from one to the other. It's a very nice effect, and it just helps give that slightly more oily, greasy effect. I could just leave it after doing a couple of these washes, and it would look a little bit dirty, a little bit grimy, but I want it to look like it's been used a lot. But kind of, it's hard to explain. You'll get it when you see it. So I will now go away and do some smoke washes. May take a little longer because for some reason thin smoke takes longer to dry properly than thinned black. And the fastest to dry usually is thinned green, which I don't know why. But I will give that another coat when it's dried, turn it over, do 2 more coats, and then we should be ready to do the smoke unthinned stage. So cool, come back in a few seconds. Ciao. And we're back again. I've now done a wash of smoke, thin smoke, on the whole piece. I was going to do 2, but I've just done 1. It's pretty much dried now. It took a lot longer. I had to make use of a specialist modelling trick, which is blast it with a hairdryer from a distance to speed the drying process. Now I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I'll bring you a close-up in a second. It hasn't changed it too much, but it has just changed the tint of the piece slightly, so it's a more browny tone, a more warmer tone, especially around the bottom of the circular areas. Hasn't really changed much in the grooves because they were dark anyway, but let's see if I can get you having a look. Get my focus going. Okay, so you can see, hopefully you can see it's ever so slightly different. It's not massively different, but it's certainly there. It's very subtle. A lot of washes and weathering is subtlety anyway, but it certainly gives it a bit of a sheen. Thing with smoke is smoke's a semi-gloss or slightly glossy colour, so it does bring a shine back, or make colours more shiny. But that's good. Ow. Right, so we've done the black wash, we've done the smoke wash. Now I need to just do the proper smoke. I'm going to use Smoke Neat, and this is to really give it the grimy, greasy look and really make it sort of more mechanical. Now this will take a long time to dry. Let's just get that on there. And this is just using Tamiya Smoke Neat. Give it a darn good shake. I'm sure the camera's wobbling all over the place at this point. Smoke X19, it's a really nice paint. You can see here, you can possibly see the kind of colour in the lid. It's really viscous. It looks dark, but it's not. It's got that lovely sort of tawny, mushroomy sort of colour to it. It's really hard to explain, but it has a look of, like, you know, grease and oil. So we'll see what comes out. And all I'm going to do is just brush it on. Again, like a wash, it will, to a certain degree, gravity will draw it down. So I'm going to keep the piece flat like that. Do this side, let it dry, and then flip it over. Because it is shiny, it's quite hard to tell when it's dry. You have to tilt it and see if it moves. It sounds really weird. And I'm going to have to be extra careful because I don't want to put the smoke on there, turn it over, paint it, and find that when I pull it off the blue tack, it's smudged up the paint underneath. So I need to make sure this coat is completely dry before I do the next coat. So, let us begin. Now, it is a really thick colour. Hang on. My brush is a little scrumpy. Okay. Right, let's give this a go. You'll note I've been wearing gloves all the way through this film. It's purely because I don't want to get fingerprints on anything. So we're just going to brush this on. Not quite as carelessly as the wash, but just gently brush it across all the surfaces. Oops, not too much. This will really give it that oily stain look. And again, with the wash, you can be a bit generous. You really want it to pile up around edges and in grooves. I'm carefully making sure it goes into all these little dimples like I did before. But unlike a wash, it's got more grip because it's a more viscous, unthinned fluid. It will tend to grip into little holes and crooks and nannies quite well, whereas a wash tends just to run out. So it's quite hard to fill a little dimple or hole or depressed area with a wash. But you won't be able to see it, I doubt, but all the little recessed dots in the engine now are looking quite dark, so give that some more welly. Remember, this is a well-used engine. This has seen some service, so the more grimy and oily it is, the better. So we'll just get that there. I don't think you can see this part on when it's built, so I'm not too fussed about getting it on here. And that's that. So now I need to let this dry. When it's dry, it'll look a lot grimier, a lot darker, and shiny as well. And then the final stage will be a dry brush of flat aluminium, which will be not as shiny as the smoke painted areas, so that'll be a nice contrast when the light bounces off it, when it catches the light. Right, so I'm going to leave that now to dry for approximately all time, probably an hour or so, and then I'll do the side, and then when we come back we will do the dry brushing. So I shall... Oh, I forgot to explain, by the way, this plate, I'm just using, this is my, for a while was my paint mixing plate, now it's just my, I'm doing something messy plate. This plate was what I used to eat my dinner off when I was like 2 years old. So this plate is like a million years old because I'm that old. You can't see, but there's Dougal from the Magic Roundabout on it. I just thought you'd find that interesting while we're watching paint dry. So in your modeller's kit, you'll tend to have lots of bits and bobs and things. You'll save things like lids, coffee lids and pots and things to put things in. I tend to have a little pot. When I'm making a model, I tend to have a little pot with bits for that model in, so I don't lose all the small pieces. Clearly this is a Star Wars model. Little tea bag tins, well, tea bag things that we put tea bags in when we make a brew. I've got little shot glasses for pieces. I have, what else have I got? These little plastic things that I don't know where they came from, but they're good for mixing colours. And I have this, which I don't even know what this is. I've no idea. I think it's some kind of little thing you put canapes or aperitifs in, or olives or something. I call it a food snail. Just handy for putting stuff in. I'm currently in the process of teaching a friend how to make and paint a model. So the more little bowls and containers I have lying around, the better. So we don't start mixing and messing up parts. We're actually both making the same model at the same time. We're making Revell's easy kit of Anakin's Jedi Starfighter. Well, I'm doing Anakin's, he's doing Obi-Wan's. So we don't want to get our parts mixed up. I'm teaching him how to paint and weather and so on. So you'll find as you go along, if you're just starting out, you'll start to collect little pots and lids and tubs. Just use them. Sticks, skewers, anything you can find. Everything will be useful to modelling, so collect stuff together. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling. I'll go and let this dry, and I shall come back in a moment in your time, and we will get the dry brushing done. Adios. And we're back again. Right, my coat of smoke, neat smoke, not thinned, has now dried. It's given a really, really nice metallic, slightly grubby, grimy hue. I shall give you a close-up look. Where are we? Okay, I don't know if you can see it. The light in here is changing because it's grim and dark outside. It's given this nice burnished, tarnished metal you can see on the round bits here. It's shiny because the paint itself is a glossy paint. Don't know if the colours will really come out on this camera, but it's always worth a try. But it's now got this nice metallic stained look, which I think is quite pleasing. So now it looks like some grimy, oily metal. What I need to do now is a dry brush coat, a flat aluminium, just to pick out the raised details and bring back a little sort of scratching and wear and tear to it, just to make it look even more metallic. So let's get on with that. Before I do, I have a valuable lesson to teach you. This is my water cup. This is what I ridge my brushes in. This is my coffee cup that my essential life-giving coffee beverage lives in. Don't get them mixed up. I did like 10 minutes ago. This paint water doesn't taste very nice at all. It's bloody awful. Yeah, so if you're using a cup for rinsing your brushes, for the love of baby Jeebus, please make sure it doesn't look exactly the same as your coffee cup. Anyway, that aside. Right, so we're going to dry brush this now with the aluminium. What I need is a little bit of kitchen roll. Oh, let me just close the door, hang on. Got building work next door, so I don't want any noise. So I need a little bit of kitchen roll. Any old kitchen roll will do. A nice flat and soft brush. Don't need a firm brush, I want a soft brush. This isn't as soft as I'd hoped, but it'll do. It's not a firm stippling brush, it's a soft square edged painting brush. I tend to get my brushes, apart from the ones I've had for like 20 years that I got from model shops, and apart from some very, very fine tiny modelling brushes, most of the brushes I use, especially for weathering, tend to be oil painting brushes, such as these. They're really, really soft sable. And the reason I want really soft is when I'm doing a dry brushing, I don't want to drag too much paint on the surface. I want to keep a real minimal coverage. Soft bristles are best. And oil paint brushes, although ridiculously expensive, this was about 25 quid, they are the absolute best. They'll last you a long, long time if you look after them. And I keep my oil brushes and my acrylic brushes separate. So I have a collection of brushes for acrylic paints. Usually look pretty bad, and a selection of brushes for oil paints only. Oil and acrylic, water-based and oil-based, don't mix. So if you can, try and keep them separate. Right, so what we're going to do is get some flat aluminium, XF16. This is the colour that the engine was painted before I started adding all the other washes. There's not much left in there, I must get some more. Right, so this is the technique you use for dry brushing. What you're intending to do is just put a very fine layer of paint on the raised edges, nowhere else. And what we need to do is load up the brush, good healthy dot of paint. I need to get some more, this is getting a bit thick and stodgy now. I'll tell you what I might do actually first, is just add a tiny bit thinner. Where's my squidgy? There's my squidgy. A little bit thinner, just a few drops. If you haven't got any little pipettes, get yourself some. eModels sell them. They're really good and they're great for dishing out small amounts of thinner rather than tipping it out of the pot, because if you tip it out of the pot it's probably going to go everywhere and you'll waste a load. Give that a shake. Right, that's better, a bit thinner. So load up the brush, and then basically on the tissue paper get most of it off the brush. You want almost no paint at all on this brush. Hopefully you can see that. I can never quite tell where the camera can see and where it can't, so keep rubbing it on until you've got almost nothing coming off. So there should be almost no paint left on there now. Take your part and just very gently, almost not touching it, move the brush backwards and forwards so that it just catches the edge and bends back a little bit. No pressure, and you'd have to vary the direction depending on what you want. If I've got a rod going that way, I kind of want that, so it's like this. I want this surface to be weathered, so I'm going to do it that way. If the rods were all going sideways, I'd do it that way to get it on the middle. So let's give that a quick go. Just very lightly. Hang on, let me put my magnifying visor on so I can see. Just very lightly brushing it on. You probably won't see any of this on camera. And it is a slow process sometimes. But what it's doing is just depositing a very fine layer of paint on the raised edges. I can angle the brush that way if I want to get into the little grooves. And it just brings it back a little bit, makes it a little bit more metallic. With this piece here, I want to get paint on the edges, so I'm going to go this way. And it makes it look a little more scraped. You'll see the paint seems to be gathering on the edge here and fades out towards the top of that dome, which is exactly what I want. And this is just a good way to highlight the way the grime has gone into the recesses but not sticking on the raised areas. It's quite relaxing doing this. Apologies if my head is in shot. Now, when I was doing the washes, by the way, the same technique applies for any kind of wash, whatever paint you're using. However, one thing you might notice is if you're using washes, say on the outside of an object, like a vehicle or something, for panel lines or just weathering, if you can, and you're not pushed for time, use oil paints. You use oil paints as a wash in exactly the same way as acrylics. The only difference is you're using linseed oil or your odorless terpenoid instead of water as the thinning agent. The only major difference is that the oil paints tend to be a lot less grainy, so if you want very fine, not granular wash, oil paints can give you a nice smooth wash, and it's often quite a bit more matte as well. But things like for smoke, for example, there's no equivalent in oil paint to Tamiya smoke. So in fact, I don't think there's an equivalent with any brand of paint to Tamiya smoke. So smoke will always be acrylics. And that is just about that. I'll just get this bottom edge here. Now none of this will probably come out at all on screen, so I'll take a couple of still shots before the dry brushing and after the dry brushing. Well, I've already taken the one before the dry brushing, and I'll post them up in a second. And that, I think, will do me. It's really, really subtle, and you can see it mostly on this part here. I'll just zoom in so you can see it. Ow. Don't know if this will come out at all, but it's... Oh, hello, camera. Basically here, you can see now, it was all smoke coloured before. Now I've got the highlights of the flat aluminium, just giving it that little metal edge. I really hope you can see it. And on the pipes as well, around the edges, and perhaps just on the edge of this bit here. And the nice thing is it gives a contrast in the reflection. The smoke, like I said, is quite glossy, and the flat aluminium is not as glossy. It's not flat completely, but you get that nice little sort of edge on the colour. And that is dry brushing. Now what I'll do, I shall now post a couple of pictures. So I will post those now, before and after. So here's the one before. Okay, that was just flat aluminium with smoke and black oil, black washes. And here's what it looks like after the dry brushing. Close up for you. So as you can see, it's a very subtle difference. It just makes the details pop a little bit, makes it look a bit more alive. And that is all we need to do on this engine. I'm quite happy with that. I'll leave that to dry now. When it goes in place, that will look nice and shiny, nice and reflective. I may possibly, if it's too shiny, I might maybe put some matte varnish on there. What I want to do is, I don't want to have this in the ship when I varnish the ship with matte varnish, because it'll just take that shine away. So I'll leave this out to the last minute, paint the ship, varnish it, put this in, then add the engines. And the engines will be a similar treatment. So I want them to be shiny. So we'll leave them. They'll be one of the last things I do is stick those on before I complete the ship then. So that is that. That's just about it for today. When we come back, I'll either show you, or I will just attach the rear fuselage parts to this. I'm still leaving this to dry. So we'll get that done. Test fit the engines, make sure everything fits, and then we can crack on with the painting then. So as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope I haven't waffled on too much. As always say, if you need any products, advice, you need to get the stuff to make your models, if you need to just get some great models, go along to eModels.co.uk. The guys there are super sweet, super nice. They have pretty much everything you need to get yourself started in modelling. Even if if you're hardcore, even if you're professional, they have everything you need. You'll want for nothing. The selection is vast. There's not much they don't carry, and like I always say, if they haven't got it, you don't need it. Also go along to eModels Facebook page, facebook.com/eModels Ltd. Again, I got it right this time. No need for an amusing caption. Go along. Great little community. You can show off your work. You can post pictures of your works. You can ask questions of the guys at eModels. And we'll all be dead friendly towards you. And just keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. If you've not started a kit yet and you're just about to and it's your first one, dive in. Start with something simple if you need to. Learn how to build it, learn how to paint and weather. Hopefully I'm giving you some good advice. So when we come back, we'll crack on with the fuselage. Until then, take care of yourselves, and we will see you soon. Ciao.